For over 3 years, I have been working on a modular file format for 3D models called STF. It is made to be imported into game engine projects, while also being usable for further editing in 3D modeling tools. The name STF stands for Squirrel Transfer Format, because I'm mostly testing it with 3D squirrel models. Now, if this topic bores you, you are probably mentally healthy, but then I must ask you to please skip this. To everybody else, I am sorry, let's dive in. Why do I believe another 3D file format is needed? Didn't this blog post by Godot clearly state glTF 2.0 is the future? What about USD? Isn't FBX the de facto standard everybody actually uses? This must be clearly falling right into this XKCD meme, right? Well, let's go over that. Starting with glTF 2.0. It is a standardized 3D file format for runtime loading. Runtime loading means taking the file, preferably straight from disk, right into graphics card memory on an end-user's device. In games development, however, it is the game engine that is responsible for runtime loading. The way any file format is supported by any game engine is by implementing the conversion from said format into the game engine's internal representation. When you build your game project, the original files are not included in the final game, not the FBX, not the glTF, not the PNG. Only the game engine's optimized internal formats, the engine-specific mesh, the BC7 or DXT5 GPU textures and so on are included. Exporting to glTF forces irreversible runtime loading optimizations, which lead to a suboptimal import result in game engines. Often mesh resources will be duplicated per each of their instances, as that relationship is lost in glTF. Using glTF in games development ironically leads to worse runtime loading and rendering performance. This Godot blog post praises glTF for the wrong use case. Godot can only convert glTF files into its own structures on import. It is not using glTF for runtime loading, missing all of its advantages. STF is optimized for the conversion into the game engine's runtime loading representation, but is not the runtime loading representation itself. STF does not compete with glTF. Well, FBX is what everyone actually uses in real game projects. Unfortunately, FBX is not a standard, is not extensible, its official implementation is closed source, and its specification is not public. All of its implementations in open source software like Blender and Godot had to be reverse engineered. Despite all that, FBX is the best choice for interchange between modeling tools and game engines right now. Despite FBX not being a standard, it is the closest real-world competitor to STF. What about USD? USD, as in Universal Scene Description, is a really cool format for composing scenes in film and VFX projects. I would really recommend reading the official FAQ on the OpenUSD website. It is really good and explains USD way better than I honestly can. Long story short, USD is a close-up and down to an entire game project which instantiates 3D assets within it, rather than a representation of just a 3D asset by itself. USD can instantiate FBX and glTF assets and others, and if somebody bothered to implement an STF plugin for USD, it could also use that. STF in that sense is just another 3D file format. USD is something entirely different. These do not compete. What remains is the only actual competing standard, Collada. What's wrong with that one? As a highlight, it stores vertex positions as printed out floating point numbers in an XML structure. In that Godot blog post from earlier, the Collada criticism is absolutely correct, and I can understand why they were so desperate for any alternative. Today, Collada is deprecated in Blender and Godot. But yes, Collada is a standard that STF is actually competing with in that XKCD meme's sense. Now, if all of that makes you think I'm some sort of weird 3D file format schizo, please tell me in the comments below. Otherwise, let me show you STF. Earlier I called it a modular 3D file format for games development. Let's start off with the modular part. STF itself is a shell that contains arbitrary resources in the form of JSON objects and associated binary buffers. Support for importing and exporting each resource type is implemented by plugins, even for basic concepts like meshes, materials or armatures. Additional custom resource types can be implemented by third parties. I implemented STF in this highly modular manner across Blender, Unity and Godot. More are sure to come. As an example of the extensibility, I implemented resource types to represent inverse kinematics, various other rigging behaviors, colliders, and various definitions useful for VR avatars. Maybe I'll show all of that off another time. And what makes SDF suited specifically for games development? All of the default resource types are optimized to be easily and quickly imported into game engine's own representations. At the same time, these resources also contain the original information suitable for further editing in 3D modeling tools. For example, meshes are triangulated, but the SDF.mesh resource type also knows which triangles belong to the same face. When you import an SDF file into Blender, you get the original topology, including n-gons if you are into that. The file size cost is minimal at that. Another good example is animations. They hold original keyframes as set by the artist, but also baked values for each frame. SDF also provides information on how to best optimize the asset for the runtime. For example, SDF stores images as the encoded original, likely PNG, but it provides the information for the conversion into GPU textures. This includes the texture type and compression quality. So where is SDF now? You can export and import SDF files in Blender, import them in Unity and Godot. Most of what you would expect from any 3D file format like that works, and then some. In Unity, you can even select and import context to directly convert SDF resources into the structures of specific SDKs like that of VRChat or UniVRM. You can of course implement custom contexts like that for your own video game projects. Should you use SDF for your games development needs? Right now, at version 0.1, nope. One individual can't quite account for everything. I will have missed things and gotten other things wrong. More people than just me will have to have a go at it. I am under no illusion of the chances of success here, but I'll continue to work on it no matter what. If you made it so far in this amateurish video, thank you so much and cheers to you. Everything is hosted in this Codeberg organization. As long as you are a sentient being, you are very welcome to partake, to leave feedback and report issues. Thank you so much.